Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Senator Mark Leno, and I am surrounded, as you can see, very intimately, by a coalition of health advocates and doctors, law enforcement folks, concerned parents and students, all of us concerned about the public impacts of electronic cigarettes. Just for purposes of introduction, as we get going here, I want to introduce my colleague, Assemblyman Phil Ting of San Francisco. He's a principal co-author of SB 140, and he will be speaking both as a parent and also addressing the fact that big tobacco is spearheading growth in the e-cigarette industry. Also joining us from San Francisco is Supervisor Eric Marr. Supervisor Marr was the original author of the local ordinance in San Francisco, which does very much what our bill intends to do, and will speak of the need for state uniform law now that 178 cities and counties throughout the state have already taken local action on this. We have Dr. Mark Avdalovich, who is at UC Davis Medical Group, and he'll explain what he sees in his patients who smoke e-cigarettes and the dangers for sensitive and lung disease patients, and will emphasize how easy it is for kids to access them. We also have a concerned parent and Cancer Action Network board member, Lori Bremer, and she'll show us a kit of e-cigarettes obtained at a local school, emphasizing her concerns as a parent. And then I'm very pleased that my good friend John Lovell is here from the California Narcotics Officers Association, I think also represent the California Police Chiefs Association, and he's going to speak to the difficulty enforcing all these different regulations we have throughout the state. And I also want to make mention of, thank, and express appreciation to our co-sponsors of the bill, the American Cancer Society's Cancer Action Network, the American Heart Association, the American Lung Association. We also have the support of Breathe California, California School Employees Association, First 5 California, and a number of students who have taken a leadership role on this issue. Also want to make mention that the bill enjoys the support of numerous cities and counties, elected officials, the California State Association of Counties, and the California League of Cities. So we are all here today to intercede in a public health epidemic impacting the children of California. This epidemic is of the toxic nicotine addiction of e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes are tobacco products. Don't take it from me, and don't take it just from the United States Food and Drug Administration, or the Centers for Disease Control, or the World Health Organization, or the California Department of Public Health, but you can take it from the industry themselves. Fascinating story. Wasn't long ago that when Congress had not yet authorized the Food and Drug Administration to regulate tobacco products, all the Food and Drug Administration could regulate was cessation devices. And one of the early major players in the e-cigarette industry sued the FDA, claiming that they were a cessation device. They were not a tobacco product and hence could not be regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. They took the federal government to court, and the court agreed with them that they were tobacco products and they could not be regulated at that time by the Food and Drug Administration. E-cigarettes are already within the federal definition of a tobacco product. That definition is the term tobacco product means any product made or derived from tobacco that is intended for human consumption. And that's just about exactly the definition that we have of e-cigarettes as a tobacco product in our bill. And as mentioned, the e-cigarette companies themselves have argued that they are tobacco products. R.J. Reynolds on their website, have a look yourself. The company states that its Views e-cigarettes, quote, is a tobacco product under federal law. And they also describe themselves proudly as an innovative digital tobacco product. Are you convinced yet? So we are well aware that they are tobacco products. They don't want to be regulated as a tobacco product, and they don't want to be taxed as a tobacco product. What they are in fact trying to sell us yet again is that this is a new and improved and safe delivery system for their toxic and addictive nicotine. We've been around this block before. In the 1970s, their new and improved, safer delivery system for their toxic, addictive nicotine was filtered cigarettes. And only decades later did we come to learn that they knew quite well then that there was nothing safe about their filtered cigarettes. I don't think this industry has much credibility, but here we are fighting them again. They fooled us once. The question is, are we going to let them fool us again? This is no small issue from a public health perspective. Tobacco products, according to the World Health Organization, are responsible for over 8% of all deaths worldwide last year. In the United States alone, over 440,000 Americans died from tobacco products. 440,000 Americans dying from tobacco products is more than deaths in the United States from alcohol, heroin, cocaine, homicide, suicide, fires, car accidents, and AIDS combined. We should be very concerned that the fastest growing segment of the e-cigarette market today is middle and high school students. Middle and high school students who have never smoked a traditional cigarette. This is what's happening right in front of our eyes. Yes, it's illegal to sell to minors in California, but they're marketing to minors in California. Gummy bears, Mountain Dew, bubblegum flavors, they're marketing to the youth of California, and the youth are buying it. We should be very concerned. So, let me please introduce stalwart advocate for public health and a great legislator, good friend, my colleague from San Francisco, Assemblyman Phil Tate.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you so much for your leadership on SB 140. I am proud to be a principal co-author for this. I think that, over the last 10, 20 years, we've made amazing strides on limiting the influence of tobacco really in our state, but more importantly, in our children. And while those strides have been huge, and while we've seen numerous public health benefits really up and down our state, the tobacco companies are back with a brand new product to really find a loophole in our laws. And that's why I'm so proud to support this legislation that's really needed to properly classify e-cigarettes for what they are, which is a tobacco product. As a parent of young children, I've started to see the devastating effects of what e-cigarettes do to our high schoolers, our middle schoolers. We've seen huge growth in both those segments, as the senator alluded to. From 2013 to 2014 alone, we saw use among middle and high school students triple, from 4.5% of them using e-cigarettes to now a shocking 13.4% of them. And that's an increase from roughly about 600,000 to 2 million kids, 2 million. And we know that doesn't happen by accident. We know that happens because of targeted advertising, targeted products, very strategic placement of these goods among schools, among school children, and really making sure that they appeal to this segment. So we need to properly classify these products for what they are, which is tobacco products, to make sure that we are treating them the same way that we treat cigarettes. They're not any different. The health effects aren't any different. The concern amongst parents should be even greater because now these children can have easier access to them, and frankly, frankly, they're even more popular right now. So again, I just wanted to thank Senator Leno for his great leadership on SB 140. Proud to be a principal co-author, and very much appreciate the coalition that's behind us supporting these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Ting. And I know we've got busy committee days, so thank you for taking time to join us. And before I introduce Supervisor Eric Marr, our friend John Lovell has to get back to committee to speak on bills as well. Not present, just speak on. So I'd like to introduce John Lovell, again, speaking for the California Narcotics Association as well as California Police Chiefs Association. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Senator. The California Narcotic Officers Association and the California Police Chiefs Association just strongly commend Senator Leno for bringing this important bill forward. Here's what's happening on the ground. Increased use of e-cigarettes among children has just risen at an exponentially alarming rate. And as the senator correctly points out, sales to minors are illegal. But the industry is very cynical about that, and as long as there isn't an effective enforcement tool, those sales will continue unabated. What is very important about Senate Bill 140 is that it brings e-cigarettes under the provisions of the STAKE Act, which is an effective strategy for reducing sales of tobacco products to minors. And what is frankly distressing is the industry is opposing a bill that will provide for better enforcement protections for children, which I think tells you what their marketing strategy is. We strongly support this bill. The damage done to children of using tobacco products is serious. It can result in permanent IQ losses for children. This is a very important public safety bill. It's an important bill for our future. We commend the senator for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to your associations. For those less familiar with the STAKE Act, it's an acronym for Stop Tobacco Access to Kids Enforcement Act. Thank you. And so the bill will bring e-cigarettes under our smoke-free laws, which restrict where they can be used in public spaces, not unlike, in fact, exactly like cigarettes and traditional tobacco products, as well as allow them to be enforced by the STAKE Act, which allows for undercover sting operations, which have been seriously effective in reducing illegal sales of cigarettes to minors from something like 50% down to 8%. We want to do the same with e-cigarettes. And our next speaker, Supervisor Eric Marr, who authored San Francisco's ordinance, which regulates e-cigarettes as tobacco products. Thank you, Supervisor, for joining us.
Thank you. I wanted to first say thank you to Senator Leno for championing SB 140 and challenging what I call big tobacco's creeping danger of increasing e-cigarettes throughout the state and this country. I'm the local legislator that worked with our public health coalition led by young people in San Francisco to pass a law joining about 180 other cities and jurisdictions regulating e-cigarettes. It's a common sense approach. But I'm also a parent of a 15-year-old. When we passed our law last year, she was a middle schooler, and she talked about kids buying e-cigarettes easily and smoking them behind teachers' backs at middle schools and high schools in San Francisco. So our broad coalition involved young people speaking for themselves and really building a broad coalition. I wanted to say, too, that this creeping danger is just like cigarettes were decades ago, and as Senator Leno mentioned, it's growing significantly among teens. I believe it was about a $2 billion industry last year, a couple years ago, but it's growing to $2 billion to about $10 billion by 2018. I wanted to say also, we call it a Wild West in San Francisco and throughout the country because it's totally unregulated. SB 140 is common sense legislation that will protect the public health, but especially young people. I also just wanted to say that Big Tobacco very clearly is trying to hook a new generation of nicotine addicts and smokers, and that we have to stand up as parents and local communities to fight back. So that's why it's courageous for Senator Leno, Assemblyman Ting, and others to stand up right now at this time. I wanted to say that as a local lawmaker, there's nothing more important than protecting the public health and the public health of our children. So I'm very proud to be here with our broad coalition, especially with young leaders that are with us as well. Thank you to Senator Leno.
Thank you, Supervisor. And should be noted, as this industry is growing by leaps and bounds from $2 billion to $10 billion, as the Supervisor mentioned, that in the same span of time, Wells Fargo has predicted that 75% of the market will be owned by the 3 largest tobacco companies. Our next speaker is Dr. Mark Avdalovich from UC Davis to give us a professional medical provider's perspective on this epidemic of e-cigarette growth.
Good morning. As a physician who's dedicated his life to treating diseases of the lung, I've become very concerned over the last several years regarding the casual perspective that exists around e-cigarettes. On the surface, these products are felt to be safe, and at its worst, are felt to, maybe in the future, represent something that could be a replacement product for traditional cigarettes. That because these products are available, we will have less smokers 10, 20 years from now. Our research that has been performed by many researchers within the field has demonstrated that this perspective is not correct. The vapors that are released from an e-cigarette contain toxic chemicals. These toxic chemicals irritate the lining of the airways of the lung. Acutely, within 5 minutes, the airflow is limited after you smoke an e-cigarette. If you, as a patient, already have asthma or COPD, it can be the sole source of that disease being exacerbated. I've personally taken care of patients that I've known for a very long time who tried to use e-cigarettes to quit smoking, and as a result of that use, they've been admitted to the hospital for exacerbations of their COPD, their chronic bronchitis, their emphysema. The vapors also contain formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen. It causes cancer. So purely from a toxicology standpoint, these products are not safe. What concerns me even more is this concept that because an e-cigarette is available, that we might have less traditional cigarette smokers in the future. The research on this area is very clear. E-cigarette users are hardly ever only users of e-cigarettes. Surveys done in multiple studies have shown that an e-cigarette user also uses something else. Typically a traditional cigarette, could be a cigar, could be something else that they inhale. So this concept that having an e-cigarette available will lead toward less traditional tobacco smokers is false. When you couple that with an understanding which population is consuming e-cigarettes at an increasing rate, we find that our young folks who probably never thought about smoking cigarettes are now thinking about smoking e-cigarettes. And the research again is clear. Within 2 to 4 years, they will smoke the traditional cigarette. So in the end, these products will actually create more smokers, which is why the big tobacco companies are so interested in having an ownership, a stake in their profitability. So for those reasons, I'm very supportive of the bill, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. You know, one of the arguments that you'll hear from the opposition is that they are a cessation device. Well, that's yet to be determined. They have yet to even apply to the FDA, which is the arbiter, as to whether a product is a cessation device or not. So step one is the industry needs to step up to the plate and apply to the FDA to become a cessation device. Should they succeed and become a cessation device, this bill will not impact them whatsoever, because this bill is not about cessation devices. It's about regulating e-cigarettes as a tobacco product. And if the FDA were to rule that they are cessation devices, well, then this bill wouldn't touch them. And following up on the doctor's comments, I just want to show you an advertisement from Mark 10 e-vapor. Mark 10 e-vapor is a product of Philip Morris. And voluntarily, they put a disclaimer on their advertisement for their Mark 10 e-vapor with 4-draw technology for a full draw. Let it glow. The disclaimer, warning, this product is not intended for use by women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, or persons with or at risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, or taking medicine for depression or asthma. Nicotine is addictive and habit-forming, and it is very toxic by inhalation. Nicotine can increase your heart rate and blood pressure, cause dizziness, nausea, stomach pain. Inhalation of this product may aggravate existing respiratory conditions, which is what the doctor told us, and it's good to know that Philip Morris is in agreement with our doctor here today. And our next speaker is Lori Bremer. She is clearly a concerned parent, as you'll soon hear, and also a board member of Cancer Action Network. Lori, we're pleased that you're here, and thank you for all of your advocacy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Senator Leno. My name is Lori Bremner, and I lost my father far too young to tobacco-related illness. I'm now a mother of 3 sons. I'm a cancer survivor myself, and I'm a longtime volunteer for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, the advocacy affiliate that makes sure that lawmakers hear the voices of cancer patients and their families when they're making health policy decisions. Senator Leno clearly hears us, and we so appreciate him for that. ACS-CAN is concerned that e-cigarettes are creating a whole new generation of nicotine addicts. Studies suggest that youth who otherwise never would smoke a traditional cigarette are getting hooked on nicotine nonetheless because of e-cigarettes. And e-cigarette usage by youth has tripled in recent years. California's Department of Health says that nicotine products used by young adults is of particular concern because adolescence is a critical period for brain growth and development. As a consequence, youth are especially vulnerable to the toxic effects of nicotine found in e-cigarettes. As a mother, this is what concerns me most. On the table are a selection of kid-friendly flavors that were taken out of the backpacks of 15 and 16-year-olds. Kids are attracted to the flavors, names like teddy bear and unicorn puke, and then they become addicted to the nicotine. The mother who gave me those vials said, "Show these to someone who can help us." And one of the prior speakers talked about the cynicism in the industry and by the vendors. This photo is from the Instagram page of a local vape shop in Fairfield showing 16 and 17-year-olds sampling at the counter. There's no repercussion for them showing this. They don't care. I know the age of these kids because one of the mothers gave me this photo. Parents should be outraged. Our children have an epidemic brewing right in front of our eyes, and we need to stand up. New studies show that adolescents who use e-cigarettes are more likely to progress from experimentation to becoming established smokers, which we know kills more than half of the people who continue to smoke, and these deaths are entirely preventable. SB 140 will save lives and keep young people from experimenting with an addiction that many say is harder to give up than heroin. How will SB 140 save lives? Just by calling e-cigarettes what they are: tobacco products. Many people don't realize a simple fact. Nicotine comes from tobacco. Nicotine is a naturally occurring chemical. It repels insects from eating tobacco leaves. That's why it was widely used as an insecticide in the past. And yet, without testing, without the science, without product regulation, e-cigarette users are willing to inhale heavy concentrations of nicotine and other chemicals all day, every day. They are placing their own health at a huge risk, but they shouldn't be allowed to expose the rest of us to what they choose to inhale. And that's why we need SB 140, so that electronic cigarettes are prohibited wherever smoking is currently prohibited. The unregulated use of e-cigarettes has the potential to result in smoking becoming socially acceptable again, undoing decades of work that's drastically reduced smoking rates and the deaths associated with tobacco. ACS-CAN does not support the notion that e-cigarettes are a cessation tool, because if that were true, they would be applying to the FDA as cessation tools so they could market themselves as such. They're not doing that. Don't listen to the spin. coming from the cigarette manufacturers. Join us in valuing public health over tobacco profits. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And before we take any questions, I just wanted to recognize that we have a couple bold, courageous, outspoken students with us today. And if you wanted to just introduce yourselves real briefly and say a word, we're happy to have you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nasia Islam. I am a senior at Granite Bay High School and also a 4-year member of the Youth Advisory Board of Breathe, California in Sacramento. First of all, I'd like to commend Senator Leno for the action he's been taking on this topic. As a high school student, I've been able to see the effects of e-cigarettes on my peers. Smart kids and good kids who would never dare to go near a traditional cigarette because of the terrible health risks will be attracted to these products because they're not aware of the many dangers associated with them, and also that they do not currently fall under the same regulations. I hope that SB 140 will be able to align traditional cigarettes with new cigarettes in order to prevent modern youth from accepting this as a new form of pop culture and hopefully prevent future smokers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shivani Parikh. I'm 16 years old. I currently attend Cosumnes Oaks High School, which is located in Elk Grove. I'm part of the Elk Grove Youth Commission and the Breathe Youth California Advisory Board. To me, it's frustrating to silently witness e-cigarettes dictating many youth's lives. And I believe that this bill will decrease that usage. And I just want to thank Senator Leno for offering this opportunity to me, and please make our generation a safer place for youth. Thank you.
Congratulations. Wow, our future is bright. So just to conclude, I'm going to suggest that our job as legislators is not to advocate on behalf of greater profits for an industry whose major product is responsible for the death of over 440,000 Americans each year. Our job as legislators is to protect the public health and to save California taxpayers the billions and billions of dollars tobacco use and e-cigarette use impacts our healthcare system each year. Happy to take any questions.
Senator Leno, do you have the votes to get this bill through committee tomorrow?
You never know till the vote's counted, and our intent is to have the bill heard and taken up as presented in the committee.
Given the points that you others have made about how important and profitable e-cigarettes are to major tobacco companies, how aggressively have tobacco firms been lobbying this bill, either with you or with fellow members on the GO committee? Have they had a pretty active presence?
Jeremy, I appreciate the softball. So for those not familiar with how things work in the Capitol, an industry that has absolutely no credibility knows better than to show their face. So there is very little visual, obvious lobbying going on. But I can tell you I have personally seen, as our bill was being debated on the Senate floor, lobbyists for the tobacco industry working the halls, trying to manipulate the vote, which they were not successful in doing. But in our committee hearings to date, the face of the opposition is mostly from the user population of e-cigarettes, and some of them very heartfelt. And I don't want to discount that. Many people step to the microphone to say, I have been smoke-free for 6 years. I've been smoke-free for 3 years. I've been smoke-free for 5 years because of e-cigarettes. Well, I'm pleased to hear that, but if they're not aware that they're smoke-free because they're still getting their nicotine addiction attended to by the use of e-cigarettes, they're really not taking care of their health or the health of their family. So the connection is very clear, and we know that in other states, what they have tried to do is lead with something that's attractive and then, almost as a Trojan horse, try to put into state law, different states around the country, a regulation that is outside of the definition of tobacco product. That way they won't be taxed, and that way they won't have the same regulations and impacts as tobacco products. So we know what's going on in other states around the country, and again, I've been here 13 years now. you pick up on little significant hints now and again when you're possibly confused on an issue. Every single health advocacy organization in the country is with this bill. Those whose nonprofit missions is to protect public health are with this bill. The Food and Drug Administration, the California Medical Association, the Centers for Disease Control, World Health Organization. It's pretty clear who's fighting for the public health and public good and who's trying to enhance their own profits.
I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, two. One the doctor could answer as well.
Sure.
First question, how does your bill, the language in your bill, address the marketing? Because that seems to be the huge challenge here, how this is marketed with the bubblegum flavors, and it's disguised, and it's very trendy. How does your bill address that?
We'll get some help, and we need some help from the federal government because the advertising of these products is really federally regulated, not state regulated. But right now, we know kids are being able to purchase these even though it's illegal. A few years ago, it was not that difficult for kids to purchase traditional tobacco products. We put in place the Stop Tobacco Access to Kids Enforcement Act, the STAKE Act, and that allows for sting operations, for officers undercover to go into smoke shops and nab proprietors in the act of selling to minors. They can't do that right now with e-cigarettes because e-cigarettes don't fall under the STAKE Act. This bill will do that.
My next question, secondhand fumes. Do we have much research in the kind of impact it has on just you and me, those of us who are non-smokers?
Right. Well, you've already heard from the doctor. I'm happy to have him speak further if you'd like. But again, don't take it from me. Take it from the California Department of Public Health, which has deemed these to be unsafe and dangerous. Those are their words. And they point out, as many studies, hundreds of peer-reviewed studies have already shown, that it's not fumes and it's not vapor. Industry wants you to believe that all that is released in exhale is a vapor, which conjures the thought of water particles. In fact, it's an aerosol made up of dozens of particles, and the California Department of Public Health has identified at least 10 particles released in this aerosol that fall under our Prop 65 law, which must disclose chemicals that cause cancer and impact reproductive harm. So that's what's being expelled, and that's what should not be in schools and in hospitals, daycare centers, and all the other public places where cigarette smoking is not allowed. It's for that reason that dangerous chemicals, including formaldehyde, which is one of those 10 carcinogens, so that the e-cigarettes cannot be used and expelled in public places.
Senator, you said that the big tobacco lobbyists didn't have a big visible presence here in the Capitol, but they've given personally to over half of the members on the governmental organization committee. What is the impact of that?
That is for you folks to talk about and surmise. I don't want to get into that myself. Many special interest industries that contribute, some, from my perspective, are better than others, spread money around. We know that's part of the political system. I personally have signed only one pledge in my elected time here in Sacramento because pledges only come back to haunt you sooner or later. I'd rather deal with issues as they come by, but one was so important that I, among dozens of colleagues here, have signed a pledge not to take any money from the tobacco industry.
currently bars, restaurants, any personal business, they're allowed to determine whether they're allowed to have e-cigarettes and signs?
Right, there's no state regulation.
So this right now bans that, puts a universal thing, is this?
This would, as with cigarettes.
Okay, and then to clarify too, right now, what is the punishment if a retailer is caught selling e-cigarettes to someone under 16? And what does the state act provide? Or, you know, force that retailer to pay or the fine or whatever?
I can't tell you the graduated penalty structure that we have in state law exactly, but I would imagine if not on the first or second offense, that proprietor of that smoke shop is going to lose his or her license. So there are fines and then finally revocation of license.
And then currently, what's the law? What happens?
That is the law. Oh, that would be the, is it about the same for both e-cigarettes and illegal e-cigarette sales as well as illegal tobacco sales? This is my lifeline.
Once they're under the state act and the smoke-free laws, then under the penal code, the same provisions that apply for illegal sales of cigarettes or having them in a restaurant or bar, those provisions will apply, which are much stricter than the current one that is under the separate e-cigarette law that we have for sale minors. So it will beef up those protections as we heard from John.
I understand that it'll beef up. I guess the question is, what are the current?
I can get you those emails.
Oh.
We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you. Thanks. Always good to have one tough question. Not that they all weren't good questions. They're all good questions. Any others? Well, we really appreciate, yes.
Fine. So is this going to be then taxed, say if this bill passes, signed by the governor, is this going to be taxed like cigarettes then? Do we know what we're going to do with the revenue?
The bill is silent on taxing. So should the bill get signed by the governor, e-cigarettes will be regulated as a tobacco product. It would be up to the Board of Equalization to determine how to tax, because clearly you can tax a carton of cigarettes, you can tax a pack of cigarettes, but e-cigarettes aren't sold in the same fashion, and so a taxing scheme would have to be designed, but that would be up to the Board of Equalization. All right, thanks again for being here.